Hello, everybody. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. We'll give everybody a moment to join. I see our attendees list here populating, so we'll give everybody a moment to join. So hang tight as more folks join our session today. Hello and welcome to those who are joining. We are sitting tight for about a moment to give everybody an opportunity to join and sign in today to our webinar. So sit tight if you've joined already. We are giving everybody about another 30 seconds or so to sign in to the webinar today and join us. And just to note to those who have joined already, if you are joining for CLE credit today, please be sure to individually register and join via your own personal computer. That's necessary for attendance tracking and engagement purposes. So if you haven't already, please do register individually and join via your own laptop rather than a group setting. Give everybody about another 30 seconds or so to join. We'll kick off very shortly here. All right, I think we have given sort of a fair opportunity to join today. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for our Litera CLE on harnessing your firm's data to enhance your practice using AI-driven deal point extraction. As I mentioned, please do register individually. We are scheduled for 60 minutes and there'll be poll questions throughout. So we'll need for you to be on your own computer to be able to track attendance and engagement throughout the CLE. Kim, if you can go ahead and advance the slide. So again, just some housekeeping to kick us off here. If you are attending for CLE credit, just want to point out that this is a 60-minute CLE eligible for 1 credit in 60 minutes states and 1.2 hours of technology credit in 50 minutes states. Throughout the CLE, there will be polling questions. There's no right or wrong answer for these, but you must answer the polling questions to get CLE credit. It's necessary for attendance and participation. And please be sure to submit your polling responses for them to be entered. And also please, as I mentioned, stay on for the full 60 minutes. That's necessary for attendance purposes. And then at the end of today's webinar, eligible participants will receive an email with a request to complete an affidavit. Once that affidavit's completed, you'll receive an email with your CLE certificate. We have applied for CLE credit in California, Illinois, New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. For those states, you will receive a CLE certificate that says approved. If it's still pending approval, it'll state applied for, and then you'll get an automatic new certificate once it's been approved. But for other states, if you're looking for CLE credit in other states, you can use the certificate. It'll say self-apply, and you can use that if your state has self-apply guidelines. Kim, if you can go to the next slide, please. So again, the CLE today is scheduled for 60 minutes. Please be sure to attend the entire session if you are interested in CLE credit. All participants are muted to avoid any inadvertent background noise during the webinar. If you have any questions, please do use the question panel. We'll be keeping an eye on questions throughout, but we will likely address them at the end just to make sure we get all of the content included in the presentation. And if we run out of time for any questions, we can email responses following the webinar. And then also we are recording today, and you will receive an email following today's webinar with a link to the recording. And then please note, We're also making the webinar available on demand for Litera customers for CLE credit via our learning management system, Litera University. So you will have an opportunity to view it both for viewing purposes only and also on demand if you are a Litera customer. So now that we've gotten the housekeeping items out of the way, we'll go into introductions for our presenters today. So thank you, Kim, for advancing. I'll start off with myself. My name's David Rogers. I'm helping lead our Litera CLE program. I've been with Litera for over 4 years now. I started as a transaction advisor where I helped customers leverage Litera Transact, and then I moved into our customer operations team. Prior to Litera, I worked in-house for a few different companies, including a large legal technology provider, and I worked in private practice as an associate attorney. I've been in legal and legal tech fields now for over 15 years. And I will turn it over to Barry now for his introduction.
Thanks, David. My name is Barry Solomon. I am Vice President, Client Value and Innovation with Litera. I started my career as a lawyer at Sidley Austin many years ago, and I'll talk a bit about that in our session. And I left my practice to manage 2 startup companies in the legal technology field. The first was a CRM solution, and the second, which is relevant today, was Foundation, which is an experience management solution. And when Litera acquired us, our company, several years ago, that's how I ended up here. And Kim, if you want to advance the slide, I'll go ahead and pass this on to Alistair.
Hey, so my name's Alistair Pimlott. I've been at Litera for a few years now in a couple of different roles, but joined Litera from a law firm as well. So I was in the M&A group at Davis Polk for a couple of years before making the move into legal tech. And I'm now on our legal knowledge engineering team, which is basically a team of former big law attorneys that works very closely with the product teams here at Litera to kind of advise on product strategy and direction, and also to verify the quality of our output and actually kind of have input into building a lot of our new kind of AI forward tools, making sure that they're up to the quality that our customers need. And originally, before going to law school, I was actually an engineer, so now I get to combine sort of my 2 backgrounds into helping build, state-of-the-art legal tech tools for law firms. And I'll pass it over to Ashley.
Thanks, Alistair. Hi, everyone. I am Ashley Gibbs. I am the Senior Director of Product Value Engineers at Litera. I have spent my career, if I sit and think back, focused on data. I'd call the better part of my career, and I mean that because I love focusing on experience management. So from data to leveraging that data for experience management, which we're going to talk a lot about. I focused on that both in-house at a firm and then on the vendor side, helping firms for a handful of years. At Litera, I arguably have the best job in the world because what I get to do is focus on our amazing products, some of which we'll talk about today, and really get to demonstrate the value that these products centering around the data bring to our customers. So thanks for having me.
All right, Kim, if you can go to the next slide, thank you. And let's just briefly cover some learning objectives for today's session. And by the end of the session, we'd love it if everybody has an understanding of experience management principles and can apply those principles to their practice. And to accomplish this, we think it's important to learn about what experience management is, why it's important to firms as a whole and practice groups and individual attorneys and legal professionals, and also recognize how practices have shifted from manual methods to more AI-driven solutions to meet sort of the modern efficiency demands. And then it would also be great to connect modern technology to client value in the context of experience management. And to accomplish this, we think you need to understand how experience management tools improve client service and support attorney competency. And from there, we'll go into the agenda to show what we're covering today. So we'll start off with some experience management background. The first 2 portions are on the history and evolution of experience management and key principles of modern experience management. And then we'll get into how AI works to really fuel modern experience management and document analysis. And then we'll showcase a practical application of using AI in experience management and document analysis. And then lastly, we'll wrap up with closing remarks and any Q&A. And so with that, Kim, if you'd like to advance the slide, and I'll turn it over to Barry.
Thanks, David. So we're going to talk first in this first section about the evolution of firm data and insights. So experience has always been an important part of the practice of law. We all learned, for example, back in law school about precedents. In the practice of law, experience means prior representative matters that could help you by using those prior matters as a model. Experience is also lawyers who handled those matters and therefore have the experience and can provide insight about perhaps a new matter that's similar to those prior matters. So most lawyers, when they're drafting an agreement, they prefer to edit an existing document rather than starting with a blank sheet and creating a new document from scratch. Now, obviously, for a first draft, it's important not to use prior work that's already been negotiated because you may have already made concessions that you don't want to make on behalf of your client. So, of course, it's always better to start with a form if you have a good one rather than a previously negotiated document. But on the other hand, knowing about a previous matter with an agreement that's similar to a matter you're handling can really provide a lot of information that could be helpful and insightful as you handle the new matter. So one thing you might do is compare the firm to the prior matter and see, because some of those changes may be negotiated changes you don't want to make, but others may be things that just make sense given the unique nature of the particular matter you're handling. So that experience can be very helpful. Now, separately, and probably even more important in terms of experience, is finding prior examples of negotiated terms. You're dealing with negotiating a new matter. It's helpful to know, well, how has other lawyers or our firm handled that particular issue in the past? So even if you don't use it word for word, it's usually helpful to have some language to start with and to look at what our experience has been. So for our purposes today, as we move through this, we're going to be focusing on negotiating all sorts of agreements, from purchase agreements, mortgages, finance documents and transactions, to settlement and joint defense agreements and other things you may see in litigation. But what is experience management? In a nutshell, it's a system that collects knowledge, expertise, and related data from across the firm, and then makes those insights from that data available to help in the practice and the business of law. And the results are higher quality legal services, a more successful practice. Another way of thinking about an experience management solution is technology that does something that, when I first started practicing law, we needed to walk around and ask lawyers for. In other words, we're going from SneakerNet, where you walked around to get the experience, to the internet, which is using an experience management solution to get answers. So with an experience management solution, of course, you're still consulting with knowledgeable lawyers. It's just easier to find them and to get to them because you have an easy way to search for that experience. So moving on, an experience management system collects information about 4 key objects: matters, clients, lawyers, and all of the related parties. With matters, this is the legal work that you actually did for a client. This would include a deal or case, a regulatory, all sorts of matters. Clients, of course, are the people or the organizations for whom you do work. The lawyers are the people staffed on the matter, the people providing the legal services. And then the related parties are all of the people associated to the matter. So this would include, for litigation, the parties, as well as the judge, expert witnesses, opposing counsel, and so forth. Whereas in a transaction, this would include, again, the parties and the opposing counsel, but other players such as consultants, banks, regulatory bodies, and on and on. What's important about these 4 objects in an experience system is how they relate to one another. You know, to completely understand a matter, it's better to go beyond just the characteristics of a matter. So you might have a list of matters, but what you also might want to know are the characteristics of the client for whom you're doing the work. What industry was the client in? You may want to know, how many years did the lawyer practice who is connected to it? Are they very experienced in a certain area, or are they in a tangential area that is of interest? And with related parties, what are some of the other matters that they've been involved with before? So for answering client questions accurately and completely, and then also to negotiating an agreement with an understanding of what's market, experience management ends up being critical to the practice of law. Now, what's market, I'll put that in quotes, what's market, that means knowing what was negotiated recently in similar agreements. Now, it changes over time. So what's market several years ago may be different than what's market today. For example, prior to COVID-19, what was market for force majeure clauses is probably different because of the learned lessons. So when drafting a new provision, it's often helpful to see examples of how this was handled in prior similar transactions. So experience management can help find appropriate lawyers who can help both in winning new work and also in delivering the legal services, with the right team. Even if a lawyer is not staffed on a matter that you're working on, it's often helpful to find a colleague who has handled an analogous issue. In other words, who has that experience. And these types of systems can help you identify those people. Without an experience management system, you may have to send out these broad emails, the so-called pardon the interruptions emails, in order to try to get answers to your questions. So before we move on to the next section, let's talk about the evolution of experience management. We've come a long way from the days when I was practicing law, and as I said, we had to rely on SneakerNet to find the firm's experience. But even with the widespread use of technology, collecting experience data is really a manual and time-consuming process. At the end of closing a deal, for example, or settling a litigation matter, instead of going right home, you might have to sit down and record information about the matter in order to capture it in an experience system. Today, there is less need for this type of data entry at the end of a matter, because by integrating with other systems, such as a time and billing system, an HR system, a docketing system, that data might already exist and it can flow automatically into the experience system. I like to call that passive data collection, right? It's coming in without you having to do anything. This is all great, the prospects of Gen AI makes the future even brighter. And we're going to be talking about that in a little bit. I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, but just to tease that, Gen AI can reduce and almost eliminate the need for a lawyer spending hours of non-billable time entering information about an experience in an agreement into an experience management solution. But of course, we all know that with Gen AI, there's still new skills you need to learn in order to both use it effectively, get the efficiency gains, while also reviewing the output to ensure accuracy. So with that, let's go to our first polling question. David, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Barry. So everybody should see a pop-up on your screen with our first polling question. As a reminder, there's no correct or incorrect answer here. We just would love to hear sort of how you currently are managing experience that you reuse. If you do intend to get CLE credit for today's program, please be sure to answer the poll question so we can track engagement and attendance. We will give folks here a moment to answer and keep an eye on sort of the results that we have coming in. So we'll give everybody a little more time to vote. Want to make sure that if you are intending to get CLE credit, that you have an opportunity to enter your response. I don't want to reveal the results yet. We do have a front runner so far, but please continue to input your responses, and we'll give folks about another 10 seconds to get your response in. All right, Ken, if you'd like to go ahead and close the poll. And as far as the results, looks like an informal process. It is the answer for the majority of the attendees today, which is probably something that I think we can sort of all anticipate, that there's sort of this informal tracking process that goes on. So with that, we'll go ahead and go into our next section, and I will turn it back over to Barry.
Yeah, I just have to make a quick comment. Seeing those results, I have to say that buckle up, because we're all in for a ride. The next, couple of years are going to be very exciting, because I do believe that experience management solutions powered by Gen AI is going to really revolutionize how we practice law, I think in a very positive way. But now that we've talked about what experience management is and how it's evolved and why it's important, let's turn to the second section of our presentation, which is some key principles of modern experience management. As lawyers, we have an ethical obligation to provide honest and competent representation. Part of fulfilling that responsibility includes striving for efficiency in our work. In today's environment, that means leveraging technology to enhance our practice. Understanding and utilizing information really has become crucial for improving consistency and reducing manual workloads. When it comes to experience management, these efficiency gains can positively impact both the practice and business aspects of law. So in the practice of law, an effective experience management solution can significantly reduce time required to locate similar matters, which can serve, as we discussed, as models for new transactions. It also streamlines the process of reviewing agreements to determine what's market, which we talked about. And that really is vital to effective negotiation of agreements. On the other hand, in the business of law, experience management solutions facilitate the efficient profiling information about matters clients, lawyers, and third parties into a database. This function is crucial for a firm to build up their knowledge management, and it enables, providing accurate and complete answers to client inquiries, but historically has required a lot of time. But if you can master experience management, you can really improve and expand your practice. Many of today's buyers of legal services have become highly sophisticated. They want lawyers with precise and relevant experience. So by using experience management solutions, you can convincingly demonstrate to these discerning clients that you and your firm are the right choice to handle their matters. Modern experience management offers several key advantages that can transform the way we practice law. Now, first, there's faster access to data. Instead of spending valuable time tracking down colleagues for answers, looking through old agreements, or sending out these broad emails hoping that you'll get a response, an experience management solution allows you to quickly search and retrieve the exact information that you need. This tool can help you efficiently access data about past matters, streamlining your ability to provide prompt, precise answers to client inquiries and get answers to questions you have as you're, handling a matter. Secondly, experience management helps with informed decision-making. Experience management empowers you with the facts and data from previous matters and eliminates the need for guesswork. By analyzing similar matters and the associated fees, for example, you can guide clients towards more informed decisions about the actions they should take and what the overall cost of those actions are likely to be. This data-driven approach ensures that recommendations are based on solid evidence rather than just assumptions. And then finally, improved client outcomes. When negotiating agreements, experienced lawyers who are well-versed in market terms and historical agreements with opposing parties can secure better terms for their clients. Now, with an experience management solution, you can extend beyond your personal experience, drawing on the comprehensive insights gathered from a multitude of matters handled by you and your colleagues. And this broader perspective enhances your ability to negotiate effectively. By leveraging these benefits, modern experience management not only enhances your practice, but it can also significantly improve the services that you provide to your clients. Now we'll look at a couple of trends with experience management. By understanding and leveraging trends that we are seeing, you can enhance your use of your firm's experience, ultimately leading to more effective and informed legal practice. 3 of these trends. First, moving away from siloed experience data. Traditionally, experience data has been stored in isolated silos, making it difficult to kind of access and share this information across teams and departments. Now, this fragmentation leads to inefficiencies as well as missed opportunities for collaboration. So we're seeing this trend now towards integrating systems that can break down these silos and enable the sharing and the access of experience data across the entire organization. This approach not only improves efficiency, but also enhances the ability to leverage the collective knowledge of the firm for better decision making. A second trend is the rise of enterprise experience management. Organizations, law firms are recognizing the strategic value of experience data, and there's a movement towards an enterprise experience management solution rather than these point solutions. The systems now are being designed to provide the centralized platform that captures, organizes, analyzes experience data at scale. By adopting an enterprise approach, firms can ensure consistency in how the data is managed and foster more cohesive and informed organizational culture. And finally, what we're going to focus on next is Gen AI in both the collection and the search of experience. The integration of generative AI in experience management solutions has really revolutionized how data is collected and searched. AI technologies are enhancing the ability to automatically gather and categorize experience data, and this reduces manual effort and reduces error. In addition, AI-powered search capabilities allow for more intuitive and insightful data retrieval that allow for the relevant information to be found with more accuracy. In summary, these trends in experience managements are not just advances in technology, they really represent a fundamental shift in how we should be harnessing and applying our effective experience. As the poll that we just had shows, things really will be changing for most of us in the next several years. Before I wrap up, I want to go on and talk about one concept, which is the importance of structured data and the difference between structured data and unstructured data. The importance of structured data really cannot be overstated in the realm of experience management. It serves as the foundation for efficient data retrieval and analysis and enables more informed decision-making. Now, many organizations face the challenge of having data scattered across a lot of different systems, your time and billing, HR, case management, and so forth and so on. And all of that fragmentation can lead to inefficiencies and difficulties in accessing critical information at the right time. In order to overcome those challenges, you really need to consolidate them. And as we look to the future, you really need to have structured data in place in order to take advantage of generative AI solutions. AI thrives on structured data. Yes, it can use unstructured data, but many of the problems with Gen AI, hallucinations and the like, happen when you're dealing with unstructured data, such as in documents, directly, rather than structured data, which is very well formatted and organized. So with this understanding of structured data, we're better prepared to explore how generative AI can further enhance experience management, and it sets the stage for the next discussion of AI in transforming how we manage and utilize data. But before I hand things over to Alistair, who will discuss AI in experience management and document analysis, I want to go over experience management without generative AI, and then I'll compare that to generative experience management with generative AI. So if you can advance once. As I explained, modern experience management brings together with passive data entry all of the information that already exists in your firm, and then it makes it available. But the problem is experience management is dealing with structured data. So if you advance the slide, up until recently, the only way that you could unlock the insights contained in documents was either for a lawyer knowledgeable about that document or with the time to review the documents to enter that into an experience system. In other words, converting all of this unstructured data to structured data. So if you can advance, this is where Gen AI comes in. Most of us are familiar with how Gen AI can answer questions using natural Q&A. So if you advance the slide, you're seeing now that instead of doing a search in experience management, you can ask it a question. But the other thing Gen AI can help with, if you advance the slide once more, it can automate the process of extracting insights from documents. In this example, an M&A document extracting deal points. And that way, Gen AI can help both at the user interface level, but also at the data collection level. So with that background, I'll hand things over to David for our second poll, and then to Alistair. David?
All right, great. Thank you so much, Barry. So before we go into our Gen AI portion of the CLE, we have our second poll question. So as a reminder, there's no correct or incorrect answer here. However, if you do intend to get CLE credit for this program, please be sure to answer the poll question and hit submit. We'll give folks about a minute or so to answer the poll question. And you should all see on your screen, how comfortable are you with your knowledge of how Gen AI works? So ranging from very comfortable to very uncomfortable. I see we've got some answers coming in. We'll give folks about another 30 seconds to a minute to submit a response. And remember that it is necessary for CLE credit to answer the poll questions, so please do submit your response. And we'll give it about another 10 seconds or so for any last minute responses to come in. We do have a front runner, but I won't spoil the results here. Another second or so. All right, Kim, if you'd like to close out the poll, and we'll show everybody the results. And again, I think this is at least what I would expect, somewhat comfortable is the leader in the results, which I think is helpful for us to know as we go into our next section. And Alistair will be kind of leading us there, so I'll turn it over to Alistair.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Thanks, Barry. So what I'm going to do now is do a kind of a brief interlude to kind of pull the curtain back a little bit about how this technology works. I think it's very helpful as someone who came from a legal background and is now working with this technology very directly every day, to understand kind of at a fundamental level what this technology is good at and why it is good at it, rather than what most of us find, which is just through kind of experimentation. We find its strengths and weaknesses, which is a big part of it as well. And I think it's interesting that the answer to that poll question probably would have been very different a year or two ago, but now it's becoming very commonplace. So I want to hone in on kind of what part of the technology I'm going to talk about today. Obviously, we don't have time to kind of cover everything in the world of generative AI, but this task that Barry alluded to of kind of how do we get unstructured data from documents into structured data in a way that is efficient and accurate, that challenge has really been, not completely solved, but very kind of substantially solved by LLMs because of their deep understanding of kind of the semantic meaning of human language. So I wanted to pull back the curtain a little bit about how that works and explain some of the key concepts that underlie that as to why it is so good at this specific task. So kind of under this AI umbrella, we've got a lot of buzzwords, new buzzwords being added every day. Some of these buzzwords are kind of 3 of these other buzzwords in a trench coat. But the kind of key component that I'm going to be focusing on today is that LLMs piece, which is kind of huge models trained on huge amounts of written text that kind of live in these massive billion parameter models. So if you go to the next slide. So, a little bit of basic background, probably not as necessary nowadays, but kind of what is an LLM? At its core, it's just a tool that uses that statistical information about the large volume of text that it has been trained on to predict the next word in a sequence based on the chain of words so far. So we have a little animation showing a short sentence, and basically every new word gets fed back in to this chain, and the next most likely word is kind of predicted and then selected. So it's a little bit simplistic. It can be a little more complicated than that, but at its kind of core, that's what it's doing. And in a way, a lot of AI problems can be conceptualized like this. So you may hear the distinction drawn between people calling something predictive AI versus generative AI. But essentially all AI is doing that same kind of fundamental operation, taking a large volume of statistical data and then using that data to make predictive inferences about a new piece of data. In this case, what word should we add to this sequence? In the case of your email spam box, is this email spam or not? Just kind of taking that previous data set, making a prediction about new information. So if we move to the next slide. Now, honing in on kind of the semantic meaning of language and how it really understands that, the first key concept that I want to talk about is the concept of an embedding. And this is basically the first step in any LLM. So it will take a word, actually more accurately a token, but we can kind of abstract that. So it'll take an English word, and then it will convert that into a series of numbers. So this is called an embeddings vector. And you can think of it basically as a coordinate in some kind of meaning space. So it basically converts this word into a sequence of numbers, and the dimension of this vector is very large. It's often around 12,000. But if we kind of imagine it as just a three-dimensional coordinate system, we can imagine this in a space that we can visualize. So we can visualize the word king being converted into a vector that lives in a certain spot in this meaning space. And so that's kind of the first thing that's happening when it's reading a series of text. It's taking those words and converting them into their equivalent meaning vectors. And so we can ask the question, does this have any kind of intuition that we can grasp onto about what it's really doing? Like, does it understand language in a way that is analogous at all to the way we understand language? So if we go to the next slide, there are a couple of really interesting things that come out of kind of the math of these embeddings vectors. So one, for example, is that you can take the difference between two vectors, like the difference between the word man and the word woman, and you can kind of get a little direction you need to move within this meaning space to go between those two words. And it turns out that that difference is about the same as the difference between the word king and the word queen, and likewise the word uncle and the word aunt. So it seems like within these embedding vectors, the concept of gender is being encoded in a way that kind of is analogous to the way that we think about it. So we think about maybe these two concepts being very similar but different to each other in their gender, and you can see in the embeddings models that kind of seems to be reflected. So just by training on large volumes of text about the proximity of these words in kind of the typical places you find them, what kind of falls out is an understanding of language that seems intuitively similar to ours. So you go to the next slide. The next slide is about the concept of attention. So this was another revolution in kind of the LLM space. There's a very famous paper by Google researchers that you may have heard of called "Attention is All You Need." And this was a big development because, understanding the meaning of a word in isolation obviously isn't enough to kind of write or read English language. So the other revolution was, how can we kind of update the meaning of a word using the other words around it? So obviously in this phrase, the meaning of the word king is now completely changed by the other words in this sentence. So rather than referring to a noun, it's now, a part of an adjective describing the size of this mattress. And so the other revolution was that we can actually do some operations to kind of move around this meaning space that we introduced, so that you can kind of take the words that are relevant to every other word in the sentence and then use those to kind of move around between possible meanings and hone in on a more specific meaning captured again in that meaning space. So first you're going to convert the word into its embedding vector, then you're going to take the embedding vectors around it, figure out which ones are applicable, and then you're going to use those to actually move around in that meaning space to get to a more specific version of the concept. Another example would be like the word tower, which could be kind of a vague concept for a tall building, and you could update that meaning to get more specific, like the Eiffel Tower. And now you've moved, and you've kind of added the embedding for hyphal, the embedding for tower, and you move to a more specific place in that meaning space that denotes a more specific concept. And then the final concept that I want to discuss is context. So you may have heard the term of context windows. These are basically how much text can you provide an LLM at one time. So that attention mechanism, how much of the rest of the text can it kind of leverage to update the meaning of a word. So these windows have been getting longer and longer, and now it's quite long, so you can feed it in documents of maybe 20 or 30 pages in length. And every time it's kind of figuring out what is the specific meaning of the word at this part of the text. It can use every other piece of text in that context window to update that meaning to get a very clear picture. So thinking back to that example of the cat sat on the mat, if you place that in a larger story, now the LM can kind of remember, in a sense, specifically what cat are we talking about in that sentence. Maybe it has a name, maybe it has some other attributes. So all those things can be applied to it. And so because you can capture all that very detailed semantic meaning in the context window using attention, using embeddings, if you ask questions of an unstructured set of text where the answer is somewhere in that context, analogous to an LSAT question about reading comprehension, you don't need to bring in any outside knowledge. You're not asking it to kind of answer any factual questions that aren't already presented to it in the context. You're just giving it essentially information in one structure and asking it to output information in another structure. It's very good at that task, and so we can use that to get that experience data out of unstructured documents and into structured outputs that we can then use in these systems. So if we go to the next slide, that's how we really transform those key pieces of data from the document into structured data that we can use in these knowledge management systems, and analysis becomes, obviously much easier after that. And just one final point is that, this is something we're saying at Litera all the time. This is one example of an AI tool. There are lots of different things under that umbrella that I showed at the beginning. We combine these in all of our different tools, in all of our different products. So it really is about finding kind of what works best for what use case and making sure that you're kind of picking the right tool for the right job. With that, I will pass it over to Ashley for a demonstration of this in action. Oh, sorry, getting ahead of myself. First, one more poll question, then over to Ashley.
Yep. So we have our third poll question. Are you using Gen AI today? So there's no right or wrong answer here. However, if you do intend to get CLE credit, please be sure to submit your response. And so we'll keep an eye on the results as they come in. We'll give everybody a minute or so to submit your response. All right, I'm seeing answers coming in here. So before we get to our practical application, please do submit your poll response to, are you using Gen AI today? And I see some answers coming in, and we do have a front runner again. I won't spoil the results. I'll give everybody about another 10 or 20 seconds or so to get a response in, especially if you are intending to get CLE credit for today's session. Please do submit your response. All right, Kim, if you'd like to close out the poll. There we go. Yes, occasionally. I use it for specific tasks or projects, and I think that'll be interesting to sort of keep an eye on as the Gen AI continues to evolve and make its way into our daily life here. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ashley for our practical application.
Great, thanks so much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and Barry, I'm going to look to you to give me a thumbs up that you can see my welcome back, Ashley. Thank you, sir, and thank you, everyone. I'm going to do my best to take everything that we just learned today and bring it into the demonstrations of the few tools that we're going to be talking about. And I want to kind of relate it back to what Barry kicked us off in the beginning, where we have the the past, the present, and the future. And so I'm also familiar with the past. When I embarked on the journey of experience management, it was very much that informal process that won in our poll earlier, which was collecting information when you can through the use of spreadsheets and SneakerNet, right, Barry? In order to get that information, you had to have conversations, or you had to mine through, public-facing information or documents. What we see on the screen here, and what I then evolved to, is the present, which is going to be that more formal process where the integration of technology has been introduced, and now we can collect data in a very structured way and share that across the firm so everyone's staying on the same data story. And so here we have foundation experience management. It's going to centralize all of our data into one place. And when we jump into a matter, we are benefiting from that integration story. So what we have here is just simply a matter profile. And by being able to bring in, Barry likes to use the term passive data collection. I like to think of this data as free data, because this is information coming from time and billing, coming from new matter intake. It's already being collected at the firm for various initiatives. So we integrate it in, and then we have the ability firm-wide to understand the name of the matter, the client matter number. And now we're starting to get a glimpse into what took place here. We have this structured metadata, like when the matter was opened, the practice group involved, the type of work that's been done, the billings that have been put forth. And through the structured information, I can start to tell quality stories, but I can also start to quantify this to be able to search back and have that comprehensive look of the experience the firm's been doing. And this is what the present day introduction of that integration of technology can do for us. Here's where things get a little tricky in the present day. So while I've benefited from integrated data coming from time and billing, it's that common data. What I'm missing here are the specific deal points that allow me to tell this matter stories externally as it relates to the M&A work that's been done. And so here I have a gap in data collection, and there's two ways that we can really go about doing this. We can go back to SneakerNet, we can knock on doors, and we can ask lawyers to fill out blank forms of information. That isn't always met with enthusiasm, because the folks that we need to lean on to ask this information are extremely busy. So we get varied results here, right? And then our data story isn't comprehensive. The other option, if we go back to that poor gentleman that seemingly was locked in a closet without water, looking at all of those documents, that's how firms are doing it today. They're hiring teams are going through the documents of the matter work, and they're looking through hundreds of pages of unstructured data and able to glean and pull the information out manually and store it here. We're also going to get varied results there because humans are humans, and the thought of that makes my eyes cross. So I would imagine I wouldn't be very successful in being able to glean everything out of that document. And so that's where I want to talk about the future, which, to be honest, is now the present. And I want to introduce to us Foundation Insights. And so what Foundation Insights does is the application that's going to be driven by large language models, and it's going to allow the firm to look to the document and then in a very efficient manner use those large language models to comb through the document and extract out all the deal points that exist within. And so just to quickly show us what that looks like, within Foundation Insights, we currently at market, we support 6 document types. We're going to talk about private M&A today. So I'm ultimately just letting the application know, hey, this is what we're looking for. We simply upload the document from local device or through document management system integration. We provide that client matter number, and we simply upload and extract. And I'm going to use the word simply there because this application is meant really for anyone to be able to come in, not have to go through training, and just start to leverage the work that's being done. And so what we're seeing here on the screen are those large language models at work. Our teams behind Foundation Insights, they know the document well. They've been able to, through pre-configured prompts, tell the large language models exactly what should be looked for in what area of the document. And so what could take somebody hours before is going to take us minutes to comb through unstructured data and pull out and reveal structured data. And so just jumping ahead to show that what that looks like. So you remember I said one of the ways to get information before was to sit with a lawyer and give them a blank form to fill out. And I think it was Barry who early on in our discussion said, lawyers want to react to something, not just start with a blank slate. And guys, that's not just for lawyers. I'd like that too. And so what Dragon does is instead of providing you with a blank form, through those large language models, we are combing through, we are identifying, and then surfacing all of the deal points that have been represented in this document, 293 to be exact. Now think about that. I was struggling just to get 10 data points in a comprehensive way. Now I'm being met with 293 data points. We optionally give the ability for firms to verify the information. So I can simply click in, I can understand where in the document this data point was found, I can confirm it myself and verify the information. Or we can trust that the large language models have done their work and feel confident that 293 deal points is so much more directionally focused than what we had in the past. I now have this data to be able to use at my fingertips, and I feel confident going forward with it. And so what Insights is doing through the extraction of these deal points is creating an aggregate database, which we're going to look at. But I want to bring us back to that present day story of our Foundation Matter profile. What Insights does with Foundation is they make a handshake, and as I extract the information out of the document, I can export this information over into Foundation, really ultimately fleshing out that matter profile and acting as that free data. And so once we've gone ahead and pushed the information over, now I'm met with what we saw before. I have that integrated data story. Let's try that again, because it is quite the wow moment. I might have hit cancel before, so I'm sorry. Okay. And so now when I jump over there, human error, right, guys? Sometimes we need the large language models to do the work. The human messed it up. Now I've been able to immediately push that information over into my matter profile, and I've gone through an exercise that can take hours and frustrate individuals whom we need to rely on to then cause stress for myself. And within minutes, I now have a full story of what took place with this matter. But that is not all. While again, I only brought a handful of data points over into Foundation, which is relied upon by the firm, and so therefore we want to take the top level information that makes sense to scale. I've still memorialized all of those 293 deal points in my Insights platform and have created a very easy to use, high level what's market visualization of all the past deals and go forward that I have been able to extract and pull into the system. And this is really meant for our lawyers to be able to lean in and very intuitively start to search and filter and pull back information based on whatever the goal they have in front of them. And so I could be trying to understand precedents. I could be on the phone with a client trying to answer a question. I could be understanding what negotiations have been done in front of opposing counsel before. And by simply interacting with the information, I can narrow down to a representative set of deals quite easily through filtering, through type ahead, through dynamic chart integration. And I can understand the details that exist underneath these documents. So again, if we're thinking about I'm on the phone with somebody and I just need to get an answer, as opposed to sending out the part in the interruption email that Barry mentioned before, I can simply compare deals in front of me, determine the deal points, answer the question, or simply find which document matches my matter that I'm going to start drafting and pull this down and finding precedent. And so that's the power of experience management, taking unstructured data to structured data and then scaling it out firm-wide while allowing lawyers to have this negotiation intelligence at their fingertips. And so David, I will hand it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley.
Sure.
So we'll just wrap up here with some closing points here quickly. If you will advance the slide, please, Kim. And we can keep going, please. And this is just a visual of the solutions available at Litera. And if you'd like to go to the next slide, please, Kim. You can use this QR code if you are interested in getting a demo of any of the products that you've seen today or learn more about any solutions available at Litera. And then finally, we'll close out with our CLE instructions again. So for those attendees who have met the attendance and engagement requirements, you'll receive an email with a request to complete an affidavit. Please give it a day or two to process, so don't be alarmed if you don't get it immediately after the CLE today. However, if you don't see it in your inbox by the end of the week, check your spam folder because they may end up there. And once you receive it, complete the affidavit and you will receive your CLE certificate. If you have any questions about the CLE certificate or the program in general, you can email cle@litera.com. Again, that's cle@litera.com. So with that, I think we'll close out today. Thank you so much for joining us. And we're looking forward to our next CLE program.
Bye all.
All right, thank you. Bye.